Hi, I'm Doug, and on behalf of everyone at Celestion, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the second video in the F12-X200 and the F12M-150 triple cone video series. The goal of this series is to give you a chance to hear a range of different rigs and different styles utilizing these full-range live response speakers that are specifically designed to take your modeling device and make it loud. In this particular video, we're going to use a trio of rigs, all utilizing the F12 speakers. At the top there, you heard my Dean from Hell into Pod go into the Marshall Valvestate behind me, and that's loaded with the F12-X200. You're also going to hear things as varied as my American Acoustasonic Jazzmaster, in this particular case running into HX Stomp XL, into my Valvestate 700 power amp, and into the pair of 1968 cabinets behind me, loaded with a blend of the F12-X200, heretofore referred to as the X200, as well as the F12M-150 triple cone, heretofore referred to as the triple cone. We'll also be running HX Stomp in true stereo into the pair of DT25 combos you see behind me, each of which is loaded with a triple cone. Before we get to the AB demos, there are a couple of things I think you're going to want to know about. First of all, down below in the show notes, you're going to find timeline links to each of the chapters in this video. You're also going to find links to the other videos, which is going to make it easier to go from video to video. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do was have some continuity with one of the rigs in the backline. So each video is going to incorporate the Valvestate 700 and the pair of 1968s because it's a very common configuration. That said, that leaves me some freedom to change stuff up in the backline. So even if one of the videos is going over a modeler that you might not be interested in, there may be something happening in the backline that you will be interested in. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, would like to invite you to do so. And please don't forget to ring the bell so we can send you notifications when each of these videos go online. With that said, let's get to the AB demos. For both the demos you're about to hear, I'm running the HX Stomp XL into the Valvestate 700 from Seymour Duncan, out into the pair of Marshall 1968 cabinets behind me. Both demos will start off with the X200 on the left-hand side, move over to the triple cone on the right-hand side, and then finish with the blend of the two speakers, which is my personal favorite. Taking a look at the frequency curve chart down below, there are two things that I want to point out, one of which is pretty darn obvious. It's pretty easy to see that the X200's got a dip at 5K. You'll really notice that on the Acoustasonic Jazzmaster demo. However, when we get over to the Tele Custom, listen for the bass notes, because if you take a look, and it's pretty darn subtle on the chart, but you can hear it, the bass notes on the Tele Custom are going to be a little bit more full on the X200 because it's a little bit more present in the bottom end. Let's take a listen. This set of demos is also going to use HX Stomp XL, the Power Stage, and a pair of Marshall 412 cabinets. But rather than panning back and forth, now we're going to hear the blend. If you want to hear one speaker or the other, you can pan your setup. And again, on the left-hand side, you're going to have the X200. And on the right-hand side, you're going to have the triple cone. But my personal preference, especially in 412 cabinets, is actually place them in an X pattern. So you've got a blend not only between the two cabinets, but within each individual cabinet. So here's the thing. We're going to start off with the Acoustasonic Jazzmaster. And traditionally, I would never think of utilizing a 412 cabinet to amplify this instrument. But these speakers in combination with these cabinets just sound great. Let's take a listen. This is probably a good time to let you know that all the presets from these demos are available for a free download via the Line 6 website under Custom Tone, where I'm known as Doug Doppler, without a space in between Doug and Doppler. All right, so this next demo is probably my favorite, and it was really in response to the sound that was coming out of the speakers. Kind of came up with the initial part, added the embellishments, and within about 5 minutes, I was ready to hit record. I don't really like playing with headphones or earbuds in the studio. I like playing through studio monitors. I love playing through actual guitar cabinets with speakers that were designed for the guitar. This next demo is pretty clearly inspired by Eric Johnson. I kind of dialed up a tone and started playing. I was like, oh, it's going to take me there. And that, I think, is ultimately the most important thing. When I play through a setup, I want to be able to go someplace that I wouldn't have necessarily gone on my own. That is to say, the tone suggests something, and then you kind of fill in the blanks. I love that. This next set of demos is utilizing HX Stomp XL into the pair of DT25 112 combos behind me. Because of the depth of those combos, you can only fit in the triple cones, which I'm kind of excited about because now I can actually play in true stereo as opposed to dual mono. Here's the thing, I want you to be able to pan back and forth when I'm using two different types of speakers, so you have that option. But in this particular case, because I can only use the triple cones, finally I'm in true stereo. This first demo is going to be utilizing my much treasured Gretsch here for something that's kind of in the ambient / P&W space, so I'm able to manipulate the stereo field, lots of delay and reverb. Really love this sound. So for this one, I've added just a little bit of stereo chorus on the right-hand side to just create a little bit of extra depth of field in the stereo field. Continuing on in the stereo chorus theme, this one's adding a little bit more gain and my Dean from Hell for something that is very much reminiscent of some of the great guitar tones Mike Landau got in the 80s and 90s. This last trio of demos all utilize the Marshall Valvestate behind me, which, as I mentioned before, is loaded with the X200, which I swapped out for the stock speaker. In the next chapter in this video, I'm going to walk through how I went about doing that, so you might want to check that out. In the meantime, on to the demos. This next demo actually utilizes the same exact preset as what you just heard. I put it together using this guitar, and then afterwards I plugged in the Acoustasonic Jazzmaster. I was like, this sounds great. The ability to be able to toggle between two different instruments that are as markedly different as this and the Acoustasonic Jazzmaster, but use the exact same setup and the exact same sound is pretty darn cool. And just in case you're wondering, even though this is Podgo wireless, I opted to use a cable just to have a little bit more consistency between the demos on HX Stomp XL and Podgo, or in this case, Podgo wireless. In case, that gets us to the final demo. One of my favorite things about the F12 experience is the ability to take an old cabinet or an old combo and give it a lease on life. Gotta love that. So there are a couple of things that I've learned that I want to share with you that I'd suggest keeping in mind. First of all, it's always important to match impedance. If you don't know how to do that, spend some time studying it because it is important. Mismatched impedance can blow up your amplifier. It's a bad thing. All right, so here's the other thing, is I'm not like an expert when it comes to, installing anything, right? But I would generally suggest, unless you are, utilizing just kind of traditional handheld screwdrivers. Why? As I've been pulling a number of the different speakers out, the screws were already stripped in some of the different cabinets and combos that I was kind of pulling these things out of. And in so doing, if I'd used kind of some electric drill, I probably would have stripped it out all the way. Now, if you got more talent with a drill than I do, knock yourself out, but be warned. I actually at one point had one cabinet that I actually had to take down at a local hardware store where they literally had to kind of drill the screw out. All right, here's the other thing, is that there is a process that I'm going to walk you through in just a moment. The first thing that you want to do, and I won't mention any names, but one of the reasons I'm suggesting doing it is because I didn't do this. I happen to have a couple of Valvestates, and when I pulled that one out of storage, or I should say that one out of storage, I didn't bother testing it first. So after I went through this whole process, I'm going to run you through of swapping out the speakers. I plugged in, and I'm like, there's a problem with the combo. Now, I fortunately was able to swap the chassis because they were interchangeable. And now actually that guy's 100 watts instead of the 80-watt one that was in there. So it was kind of a win. But just make sure it works before you go through all of this. All right, first and foremost, take a look at the back of the cabinet there. All right, as it turns out, the Valvestate 112 combo has got a lot of space back there. All right, before you do anything, I would suggest taking a photo of the terminals so you know where things are supposed to go when you put the thing back together. Also, when you go to unscrew the back plate, put the screws in a little dish. These things sprout legs, and I've lost a few in my studio here. I finally got smart and started using dishes. All right, the other thing is, once you kind of pull the speaker out, you put the new one in, but before you hook anything up, you look back at that photo to make sure you're going to wire it correctly so you've got it phase coherent. Then you put the back plate back on, and finally, I would suggest using something like a ditto looper to just break in the speakers. So that gets us to the end of this video. Want to thank you for hanging out, watching the whole thing through, or if you jump to this chapter, I'm glad we put this in here, and I hope it's of service to you. For more information about Celestion speakers, whether it's the F12s or anything in their line, including their impulse responses, which by the way are awesome, as well as Speaker Mix Pro, please visit Celestion.com. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, we'd like to invite you to do so, and please ring the bell so we can let you know when the next videos are going to go online. With that said, I want to thank you for watching. Cheers.